this thing. See what the day brings. Alright, let's see. So, the daily law, what did it say? Let's check it out, because I forget. Let's see. What is today? March 4th, the creative process. Imagine yourself years in the future looking back at your work, at the work you've done. From that future vantage point, the extra months and years you devoted to the process will not seem painful and laborious at all. Time is your greatest ally. It was that's the kind of short version of it. It's kind of talking about fighting the urge to be impatient and embrace the slowness of the process. And resisting the urge to get to the finish line or the end point of whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're an artist or whatever it is. The urge to rush will tend to taint the creation itself. And it's funny because I was kind of talking about, vaguely talking about this with my buddy at work, and it was more to the point I was making was like, just drop the stress with everything that's going on in the world. Because right now, as I film this, there's all kinds of military activity that the United States is taking. Most notably, the current one is Iran, but there's also Russia and Ukraine, which is still going on, that no one's talking about. All of a sudden, that's old news. And then Israel and Palestine, which we're not directly involved in, but we are supporting. Same with Russia and Ukraine. We're not directly involved with Russia and Ukraine. We're just supporting Ukraine. It's a proxy war. Really, we're at war with Russia, but we're using Ukraine to do it. And the same with Israel, Palestine. But that one's like nothing. I mean, they're all something, but the one with Iran, we are directly involved. We are the ones fighting. And the big question is whether or not boots will hit the ground. But I was kind of listening to some stuff at work, and the thought just hit me. It was like, and I think this often, and I tend to forget, because life has a way of making you forget this point. And the point is, and I think I said something to the effect of, to my buddy, I told him, look, at the very end of this journey, when you're laying in that bed, and you know your last breaths are close. You know, all the stress that you put yourself through, and you look back at your life, none of the stress is worth it. Everything was always okay. And that goes back to something my girlfriend told me a long time ago when I very first met her. How did she word it? It all works out in the end. That was the phrase. It all works out in the end. No matter what. No matter who you are. That's exactly how it was meant to be. And I know some people will hear that and be like, oh yeah, well what about the terrible things? Like what about the girl that gets raped and murdered? Did that work out okay? Yes, in the grand scheme of things. In the grand scheme, it all worked out okay. Good things come from terrible situations. And the example I give whenever I say that is Jesus being crucified on a cross. Forget the name Jesus for a moment. A guy got murdered. Basically what that situation is. A guy got murdered. Was that okay? For a lot of people, yeah, that turned out okay. A lot of lives were saved because that guy got murdered. A lot of lives were turned around because that guy got murdered. See, if you generalize it and take away the religion and the name of Jesus, you just say a guy got murdered. How is that okay? Look how many people, how many lives were changed for the better because a guy got murdered. That's how you have to look at it. Sometimes the religion of the topic taints the situation in a way where you just cast it aside like, ugh. But look at it that way. Guy got murdered one of the worst ways possible. They say crucifixion is one of the worst forms of torture. It's a slow death. So yeah, very good things can come from very terrible situations. And that's the best example I can give when it comes to that topic. But yeah, when it comes to the daily law, gates closing. When it comes to the daily law, it's the slowness of life. Don't be in a rush to get to any kind of end point in life. Because I have a feeling this is not the end of this life. Isn't the end of your existence, is my speculation. The process of rebirth tends to be in everything. It's everywhere, really. You know, the death of one thing signals the birth of another. You know, it's in the architecture of the seasons. Right? Spring is the symbolism of birth. You know, summer is growth. Fall is like the peak of maturity and the signal of decay, down into winter, which is decay into death, and then from winter back into spring, and that's the cycle of rebirth on the seasonal scale. Right? Even on the human personal level, right? You're born, you grow, you reach the peak of your growth, and then once you reach that peak, it's that small, slow decline into decay and then into your death. But along the way, you know, if you're fortunate enough, you'll have kids, and that's a rebirth of sorts, because the part of your essence is in your children. You know, and then that cycle just keeps on going and going and going. That's all. You know, even in the paradigm of like maybe a career that's creative, you know, say you're an artist or an inventor or an engineer, you know, you have the start of a project, you know, and you're working on solving a problem or creating an item. That's an uphill climb towards the moment that process really starts to take off, you know. And then once there's always that cycle, an uphill struggle towards the peak, and then once that peak is attained, it's an easy cruise towards the end. But I think it's funny how a lot of what I'm reading in these daily laws has a lot to do with fighting against impatience. Impatience causes a lot of errors to be made, a lot of missteps, and missteps made out of impatience are those are the ones that hurt the most, because those errors are 100% your fault, because you were being impatient. If you just had slowed down a bit and just allowed it to unfold, whatever the process is on its own, just let it unfold, don't try to rush it, then that error would have been easily avoided. You know, that's 100% the case at my job. You these medical devices, it's a step-by-step process. Each process has a number, and it tends to be by tens. It's operation 10, operation 20, 30, 40, 50, all the way to my operation's operation 400. So, if you divide, and there's more past me, but if you divide it, by tens, that's at least 40 steps taken until the device gets to me. And they do time trials to see how long it takes each operation to be completed. And efficiency is important. Time is money. That's what they say in business. So they want that device to be made as quickly as possible, but they don't want it to be rushed, because that's when mistakes are made. And at my level of operation, I'm at the very end of the process practically. And the problem is, if I catch a mistake, see, I just test it. I test the device to make sure it works. So if I catch a mistake, I'm pretty much the end point. I'm one of the endpoints that catches the mistake before that device is completely finished. And if I'm catching a mistake, that means all that time and money it took for that device to get to me was a complete waste. And normally, some things can't be avoided in terms of mistakes. Or it's not even an error, because broken wires it's a hard thing to avoid. And it's not always operator error. But it's easy in my job to just slow down and make sure you did it right. It's the number one way to avoid a mistake. And that goes for your life. That's why I kind of like where I work, because the whole thing's a big metaphor for your life. You're taking all these steps along the way in life towards whatever goal it is. Really, I don't know. Career aside, that's the big question, right? What is the goal in life? Career aside, what is it? And that's where the spiritual, quote unquote, religious side of life comes into play. Making money aside, what is the goal in life? What are we supposed to be doing here? And as soon as I say that, as soon as I ask that, what pops into my head is, it's not what you're doing, it's who you are while you're doing it. I've probably said that a bunch of times already in these videos. It doesn't matter what you do and how much money you make. It doesn't make you a good person. It's who you are while you're making that money or doing that thing, or while you're in the middle of that project. As frustrating or stressful as it is, who were you while you were experiencing all that stress? How did you react to it? That's why I think a lot of what all this is in terms of life, that little 4-letter word, it kind of feels like it's a test. It kind of feels like we're being tested. All right, God's like, I'm going to throw this at you and see how you do. That's all throughout the Bible. God throws a bunch of stuff at people, certain characters, certain people in the Bible. But it kind of sounds evil, like why would God do that? Why wouldn't he? It kind of makes sense to me. Kind of want to weed out the strong from the weak. Are you gonna break, or are you gonna bend? Are you gonna flow with it, or are you just gonna be? It's a lot. If you're building a team, you want to know who the complainers are. Where are the weeds? You want to pick the weeds out of your garden. Because that negative mindset, that dark mentality, that's infectious. And it's definitely not helpful. So if you want a strong team, you got it sounds rough, but you got to cut all that off. Throw that away. I forget who there's a main character that really gets, like, God throws the worst things at him and he doesn't break. But yeah, I mean, that's the big question. What is it that we're doing here? I don't know. But that's what everybody should be asking themselves. As soon as they wake up. Here I am again. How am I going to do this today? Am I going to do it like I did yesterday? Am I going to lose my temper and cuss somebody out like I did yesterday? You know, not literally me, but, you know, if you did that yesterday. Some people are like that. Some people enjoy that. Some people enjoy the energy that they get from getting angry and letting loose on somebody with their tongue. Those people have to exist. Sometimes those people have to exist because you need to learn, especially if you see it, you don't like what you saw, take a note. Don't be that guy. You know, I'm sure I'm a negative example for somebody to learn from in some way. Everybody is. Nobody's perfect. And in some way, everybody's doing something wrong for somebody else to see and go, okay, let's not do that. Let me see, how might that apply to me? Let's see. I can be ego-centered, right? I can be prideful at times. I definitely can be impatient, that's for sure. I'm sure there's a bunch. I'm definitely not perfect, so I know there's a bunch. I'm tired. Maybe I need my drink. I always forget to drink this on the way. I don't know, but there's a bunch of things that I'm sure I'm doing wrong that other people can learn from so they can do right. If there's people out there like that for me, I'm pretty sure I'm out there being that for someone else. Well, all of a sudden I got really tired. Whew. It's gonna be that kind of day for me. Let me see. I didn't check any of the headlines for what's going on in current events, but I'm sure a lot of it has to do with what's going on in Iran. Peace through strength. That's what somebody was saying. Sounds like an oxymoronic statement to make. And I forget who else used it. Somebody in the past that we were at war with used it. I don't know if it was Russia or it was some communist country. I don't know if it was Germany during World War II. But yeah, that slogan's been used before. Peace through strength. So I thought it was ironic now we're using it to justify what we're doing around the world. See, the problem with all this activity militarily that the U.S. is taking, you know, these wars, it's like say we solve all the problems, right? Say we get every country in line the way that we want. Let's just say the U.S. ends up winning the world war, right? We end up being the ones that run the world. Once all that is taken care of, and what I see happening is we don't have to keep an eye. If we don't have to keep an eye on other countries anymore, then that eye is going to turn around on us. Right? That big brother that's currently watching the world will now be watching us. Because that will be the last enemy. The enemy within. That's how they're going to see it. Right now, the enemy is external. It's all these other countries, right? Like Iran and whoever else. Russia and whoever else. Right now, the enemy is external. But however far off into the future it is, when all the external enemies are gone, it will only be logical for them to see the last enemy as being the enemy within. And really, that's kind of a healthy way to think on an individual level, right? As a person, stop looking for enemies outside yourself, because your biggest enemy is inside of you. It's whatever's in you that's working against you and holding you back from doing whatever it is that you could be accomplishing in life. That's a healthy way to think on an individual level. But on a global scale, if you're like a world power, now you're seeing your populace as being the only enemy left that could take you down. And that's kind of scary when you're part of the populace and not part of the ruling elite or the ruling governance. And even then, it's like, okay, say the U.S. runs the world. You know, you're going to be looking for enemies within your own government. If somebody's going to be in there trying to take you down, you have to think that way. It'd be naive to not think that way. So now here's where the paranoia sets in. That's crazy. Because you're going to have to be paranoid about somebody working against you from within. Again, on an individual scale, that's healthy. Weed out all the little demons that might be looking to tear you down. On a global governance scale, this is going to get wild. I don't know how long it'll take to get there. See, by this point, all countries and borders will be gone. So George Soros will have won that war. You know, the open borders society, where there is no more borders, there are no more individual countries. It's just Earth, and we are the Earthlings. Right? There won't even be an America and Americans, or Russia and Russians. That'll all be gone. By this point, we'll see it as Earth, and we're the Earthlings. And you'll have no choice but to just all those five eyes that are currently looking out into the world, right? Right, the CIA, and right now the FBI is what the CIA is to the world from America's standpoint. That's what the FBI is here. It's the eye looking within. You know, whatever the CIA does, looking out globally into the world in terms of surveillance and espionage, that's what the FBI is here. I don't think a lot of people really understand that. But what are the five eyes? The NSA, the CIA, the FBI, there's two more. But there's 5 global surveillance entities. Major ones. And that's what they call the Five Eyes. They're the spy agencies. And I don't even know if that involves any other global entities in terms of the surveillance state. Come on. This guy's got to get over. But yeah, that's how I see it. That's how I see it. That's the logical conclusion of what's going on globally. It'll have to be internalized. I don't know. I'll probably be gone before that happens. There's no way this will happen in my lifetime. But it will happen. This is what George Orwell saw when he wrote 1984, and that whole idea of Big Brother's watching you. Because right now, Big Brother is watching us. You know, we're being surveilled through our phones. I mean, it'd be naive to not think that. I'm gonna let all these trucks get over. I'm gonna go very slowly behind them. Come on, bring it. I'm okay going slow. You are okay. Come on, buddy. But yeah, that's how it's gonna have to be. And George Orwell's eye saw very far into the future. How he did that, I have no idea. Because he wrote it in 1948. And the things that he wrote are happening now, like in a big way. Yeah, he was a very forward thinker, that dude. If you have anybody out there, if you have a chance, read Animal Farm and read 1984. It'll blow your mind, especially considering when it was written. Yeah, I kind of got off on a tangent, but how does that work into the daily law? Don't be impatient. Just watch it unfold. Don't stress out over all the things that are happening in the world, because it was always meant to happen. I have a feeling it's happened before. That's my tinfoil hat theory. This has all happened before. You know, in the holographic universe, fractal design. Look that up. Of how everything is. This is just. This has happened before. All of this has happened before. I don't know if I mean that in another lifetime or. But that's the deep feeling I get. This is not the first time all of this has happened. Don't stress out. Don't get too caught up in it. Don't get too wrapped up in the experience itself. You're here to observe and report. And that reporting will happen when you pass. You're going to take back all the experience that you had here to the source that created it. And then maybe you do it again. Something like that. So my belief is a little bit different. I know my foundation is Christianity, but I don't know if I believe in a heaven and a hell in terms of how it's portrayed. It feels like something else is going on. And as soon as I say that, the little voice in my head goes, maybe the heaven and hell is right here on earth through the experience that you're having. It's a state of mind that you bring to the table every time you open your eyes each day. Each day is see, there's another cycle of rebirth. The day itself, you know? You wake up to this, you experience the day, and then you go to sleep. That's a birth, a life, and a death, if you think about it, within the course of a day. and then you're born again the next day to have this experience all over again. You know, don't be in a rush to get to the end of the day when you're laying down to go to sleep. Slowly experience the day and let it unfold in a way that you can process calmly and rationally and just openly. I know all this sounds like woo-woo, kind of stupid retardedness, but to be honest, if you can actually live the day that way, you'll enjoy it a lot more. Or at least you'll be able to experience it with less stress. You might not enjoy it, but it diminishes the stress that you might currently be experiencing. You know, no matter what's happening in your life. Right? Stress is a choice. I know it seems like it's a natural reaction, but it's actually not. It's a reaction out of habit. You know, the stress response was always only to be intended during times when it was needed. You're not supposed to be living your daily life under constant stress. Right? The fight or flight mechanism, that's stress. It's a moment of instant stress that's telling you to move away from something that's currently causing it. And you were never meant to be constantly in that. But, you know, the way our devices have us locked into the events of the world, you're not even really supposed to be knowing what's going on around the world. You know, mentally, I'm not supposed to be carrying what's going on in Iran. If we didn't have all these devices and all this news being constantly pushed into your mind, you wouldn't even know this was going on. Right? All this Russia, Ukraine, all this stupidness. Like, think about it. I woke up today, I'm going to my job. I'm just going to go do a little task. You know, I have food for the day. I have access to water. You know, I'm safe. You know, I'm healthy. Why would I be stressed about anything going on? My world is actually very small. My world really only exists from Encino to Valencia and then back again in about 8-9 hours from now, back to Encino. What is there to be stressed about? Nothing. I just have this consciousness of what's going on globally, you know, and it kind of concerns me a bit because this could really end up in a huge catastrophe of, you know, nuclear war. But even then, what do I care? There's nothing I can do to stop it. Why am I going to stress out about it? Can't stop what's going to happen. That's when you have to kind of like reset your mind back into, well, this is whatever happens. Whatever. I'm going to have fun. I don't care. I'm going to enjoy all of this. And if I can help people stress out a little less, maybe that's what I'm here to do. That's how I see it. I'm not going to stress until the moment requires it. You know, but then people be like, well, what about the people in Iran? You know, how could you be like that? Well, you know what? Sorry, I'm not in Iran. And me stressing out over here is not going to help them over there. That sounds ridiculous. What is you know, protesting on the street and rallying for, you know, free Iran? You're not helping them at all. All you're doing is making yourself feel better. And that's selfish. That's actually ugly. Thinking you're helping Iran by protesting on a corner waving a flag. You're not doing anything but you're stroking your own ego, thinking, you know, by making yourself feel like you did something to help. You did nothing. Sorry, but that's the truth. Here's my exit. So yeah, that's why, you know, I stay informed in terms of what's going on globally, but I don't take any of it serious because there's nothing serious to take in. tribes have always been at war. You know, that's global conflict on a smaller scale. It's the same thing, right? You know, on the individual scale, there will always be people that don't get along. Think of it that way. Can never be such a thing as world peace. That's an impossibility. World peace is a ridiculous idea to try to strive for. Because there will always be individual conflict. There will always be conflict amongst individuals. So that means there will always be conflict amongst groups, which means there will always be conflict amongst tribes. There will be conflict amongst religions and states and countries and regions. There will always be conflict. As long as there's, you know, it's funny. They want diversity. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those three things are diametrically opposed. If you want diversity, that means diversity of thought and opinion. If there's diversity of thought and opinion, that means there's going to be conflicting opinions. Look at what you're asking for. It's oxymoronic. It's insanity. As I said that, as I thought about that, it's completely ridiculous. But everybody falls for it. So as I park, I'll end it with that. Think about that, what I just said. There will never be peace. First, you have to find peace within yourself. Before you even think about trying to find peace in the world, you have to find peace within yourself. So that starts with looking within. A lot of people don't want to do that. They want to look outside themselves and they want to fix those problems. Forget those problems. Fix your problems first. And once you get all of those in line, and good luck with that, because that's pretty tough. That takes a lot of work. Sometimes it takes a whole lifetime to fix the issues that you have. And it's a constant daily effort. Don't look at it as a struggle, but it does take effort to fix all your flaws. And you have many. We all do. So that's where you need to start. Start down that road and go slowly, because all the problems you currently have took as long as how old you are to grow into what they are today. So if it took that long for those problems to be created, it's going to take at least an equal amount of time to fix those problems. That's what I see. That's how I see it. You know, it took a while for you to get this way. It's going to take quite a while for you to fix it. Unless you have an event like I had where my mind was completely reset. I got lucky. In a sense. That was a blessing in disguise, what happened to me. So, be patient with yourself when it comes to fixing things, because what you remove has to be slowly replaced with something healthy. And the error is removing something unhealthy and replacing it with something equally unhealthy. So just go slow and take your time. Be patient with yourself and be patient with others. And then maybe we can start slowly go down the road of life. That's it. There is no goal of peace or justice. It's a wild, chaotic world. And there's peace in the world. And there's war in the world. And there's everything in the world. That's the spectrum, right? It's all here. But where are you? And what are you looking at? I think that's something to start thinking about. Where are you putting your focus? Right? Be the change. Wherever you're focusing on, if you're focusing on a bunch of dark, negative energy, maybe put that down for a while and start focusing on something positive so you can be positive and you can start spreading positivity. Thoughts for the day. Let's go to work.